Good morning. Can you hear me?
Going down to Florida?
There you are. Can you hear me okay?
Are you going down to Florida?
Yep. Yep. How about yourself?
Yep. Yep. I'm
Good.
gonna take advantage of that Sunday bonus session, so I'm going down there on Saturday.
I was my young daughter, I just had too much going on. And,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll be down there as early as I can Monday.
You driving down?
No, no, that's a pretty good little haul for me coming from Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, Nashville. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I gambled a little bit this time. I've never flown Spirit Airlines. Have you?
Once.
Okay, that's all you have to say. Once.
And only once. It was a round trip ticket, and I only once.
Yeah.
And
Wow. They suckered me. They suckered me in. Yeah, they suckered me in this real dirt cheap flight. And
I didn't take the dirt cheap return flight. I scheduled it.
wow. Hello, pirate.
Good morning. Happy Halloween.
Hello, pirate.
Thank you, George.
I thought I'd get in the spirit of things here. Chad's Spirit is a never. No, not ever. Did you enjoy it? Spirit Airlines?
Oh, that's who I'm flying in on.
Oh.
So you may not see me.
There's an off chance that we will not see you. I'm going to see how long I can keep this stupid guy. Guys, it gets. I had to do something for Halloween. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Let me see. How the heck do I?
No, George, this is the first time. And, round trip I forgot. It was cheap. I was like, whatever, round trip, I can handle this. So we'll see what happens.
As a big guy, it's not very comfortable at all. So, but my client was paying the bill, and they took care of my airline ticket. And I said, I didn't even tell them my return trip was on Southwest versus Spirit. I said, but I know full well, if I do it again to Naples, I'm not going Spirit.
Now I can't figure out how to turn this off.
Yeah, it's off. Well, we got something on there. You got some sort of daisy or something on the side of your head.
Video filters. Okay, this is a Well, I may have a daisy in my hair for.
No, now you got a line straight across.
Yeah, well, we never want to go back to this stuff, right?
Now you're going into the OR.
How do I? None. There it is. Oh, who knows? Like, why? Okay, at least we figured out how to do none. Yeah, okay. Just had to have a little fun. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Good.
Well, I am looking forward to seeing you guys down in at least Chad, Joe, and Michael. Steve was unable to make it. Joseph's unable to make it. Which
No, I didn't. I'm gonna do my best to try and get there. I just had the prior commitment that was booked in July, but if I can squeeze it in, I'll definitely try to make it.
Would love to have you guys. We have you've probably picked up on the fact that when I put these agendas out there, we cleave to the general theme, and we, most of what we put up, but it's often at the last minute, and Michael doesn't know, I'm going to call him after this and ask him to do something if he's willing to do something. But, so the agendas actually evolved a little bit here in the last week as we talk through the agendas. I start talking with panelists, dig into, the last few weeks creating the workshops. It's actually evolved a little bit. I will tell you right now, Steve Cummings isn't on this call. His contribution on when we are going to jointly present the CEO workshop marketing event on Wednesday. We went through it last night, and I am
stoked.
Quite excited. Yeah. I don't know. Why would I hold back today? It's Halloween. I am stoked. I am incredibly psyched. Steve crushes it. He uses these workshops, and when he explains to you, and we'll do a recap afterwards so that people who were not able to participate get a view of what went on. He has a heck of a way of presenting the story, and he does it in true dramatic fashion. I mean, he doesn't get all dramatic up there. Steve's he's a seasoned pro, but he tells the right story, the hero, the drama, the journey. He tells it very, very well. So that's excited. That hasn't changed. What we did change is we changed a couple of sessions. Jeff Ketchum, unfortunately, you haven't seen him for a little bit. I don't know how it happened, but he is not able to come for health reasons. He suffered a terrible concussion. So we have tweaked, and Barry is my partner in crime on some of this. We've tweaked Tuesday afternoon. I'm getting my days right. Barry pointed out just yesterday, he's like, you don't have the days of the week on here. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday afternoon, Barry is going to lead a group. Barry, you want to describe it? Put you right on the spot.
Oh, that's cool.
Welcome.
That's good. it dawned on me that there's a lot of things going on in the world and in our economy and with business that relates to controllable and uncontrollable risks of the business. And how do these controllable, more so the uncontrollable risks affect, number one, the work that we're doing, number two, valuation, number three, the results of some of the work that we're doing, how is it affecting decision making, even go forward and get and get some coaching. What's the psyche of the business owner regarding interest rates, inflation, employment, some of the geopolitical stuff. We're not going to get into a political conversation whatsoever. I'll close that down immediately if that happens. But really, what's the psyche of what's going on? It's interesting to hear from some of the valuation people in the room. How does this affect valuations? From an investment banking point of view, how is it affecting getting deals done and pricing? Because I believe it, when I brought this up to George, we believe that it really, it has an effect, but really, what is the effect?
Yeah. And there are those risks that we can control. And in fact, that's what John Brown and I are going to discuss here as sort of the keynote on Monday. We're going to talk about what risks can we address inside the business when we think in terms of having the right insurance, having up-to-date buy-sell agreements that are properly funded, it's succession planning, key man insurance, compensation plans that like non-qualified comp plans that are targeted at the senior leadership to make sure that their feet are nailed to the floor and that they're motivated, that they're aligned with and accountable to the business's success. And there was some great stuff coming out of BEI. They've consolidated this topic into a very tight, it's a short training program. And so those are the controllable risks, and Barry's referring to are the uncontrollable risks. What happens? I mean, we asked, that's our bonus question, right? What impact does the market have on the value of the transferable value of your business? So it's, Barry, you're going to lead it as a moderated or facilitated discussion of the plenary. Everyone is going to, be able to contribute and learn.
Yeah, my position or my opinion doesn't count. Really, I'd like to have this is going to be a conversation.
Yeah,
it's a discussion, and we may get some fireworks, which would be phenomenal. Okay.
Yeah.
Some opposing points of view, but really, there's a lot of brain power in that room, and I think this could be a fun conversation to have, harnessing the brain power.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it. It's talk about a timely topic. Yeah, I wanted to highlight that. And then this panel is going to be moderated by Marie Benedetto. And we're going to talk about, what prompted you either a long time ago or recently to change what you're doing. And so that's going to be a terrific conversation. We're really only going to tackle 4 or 5 questions, but with input of the room. The nice thing about our conferences, they're tight, right? And so everyone has a chance to add their voice. And we still have people. We had someone register just this morning. So it's going to be I'm really looking forward to the event. Joseph, it's interesting. Steve Cummings is going to talk about, he has a different business model than yours, but it's in ways similar. And that's one of the topics he's going to hit on Wednesday morning when we do the first portion of this and we talk about teeing it up and the kind of fees that Steve is generating from his work using the 3 dimensions of growth and the Clarity software, which he's a huge fan. So it's going to be cool. Joseph, if you're able to come, if things work out, that would be fantastic. I'd be thrilled to meet you in person. So didn't mean to hijack the conversation there, although I'm sorry. Any questions about this before we move on to whatever else you guys want to chat about?
Yeah, George, I do.
Please.
I read your book. It was great. In the last chapter, you talk about the execution leadership system.
Yeah.
Are we going to spend any time on that, or is that the subject for Sunday's event?
That's the subject for Sunday's event. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, the ELS that's the subject that's more of a facilitation question. So I'm picking where things were going to fall. What we are going to do.
I was just trying to get, and I've talked to you about this before, right? So I just want to, get clear on, the fact that we're going to learn how to help these clients build a dashboard with a dashboard with KPIs, and how to run these weekly, monthly meetings, right? And how to set up the objective key results, for each of these dimensions.
Yep. So those KPIs, stay tuned. We're going to be publishing a set, and during the talk, I'm going to share with you, and you'll have them in your books, prompts that you can use to generate KPIs. A first draft, right? A first draft of KPIs, because it always depends on the client. What we'll focus on Sunday, Michael, is, okay, how do we take a methodology that has 3 dimensions, and that we tend to say, okay, we're going to create a launch pad, then we're going to create a growth, and we're going to make the connection between revenues and value. Great. Now, how do we apply that to a given company? Well, how do we account for the people, the expertise, and the resources, time and dash that this business has, and how do we prioritize them in order to generate quick wins, in order to continue to keep the senior team engaged in the process, so that as we say, okay, right, we've decided that this is our top priority, and we're going to knock that down first, then this, then we're going to get step by step to our plan, which we'll deploy through sprints. Then the moderating, the facilitation skills come into sort of on the whole, on a macro level, and then on a micro level, working with the senior leadership team. And those skills, the nice thing is those skills, once learned and practiced, transfer from everything from one-on-one conversations to these bigger sessions, Mike. And we'll arm you, as much as possible. And we're going to do, it's a repeat of the same class, but I learn something every time I teach it. So we're going to do I've nicknamed, I think we're talking about doing a Certapalooza in February here in Charleston, and doing Fearless 2, which is what you're participating in on Sunday, and then doing the specialist workshop on days 2 and 3. And
hey, George, how much will you guys be jumping into the system this week or next week?
When you say you guys, you're a partner in crime here, Chad. So that's a great question, and we're going to jump into it a lot. Let's go back to we're going to jump into it a lot. Because ultimately the software is simply the methodology made scalable, right? The methodology made applicable, the methodology made trackable with your clients. So when we start on Monday, we will get into, we're going to close the day out with looking specifically at lead generator, best practices for using it, how to interpret the report, best practices for following up. And that is going to be both a presentation. I'm going to do a little chalk and talk, but then there are a lot of people in the room generating results, right? So we're going to that's our first sort of dive into the technology. And we're spending all morning with it, Chad, on Tuesday. We're going to look at how we take the outputs of the Clarity strategic capacity analysis and generate KPIs, generate deliverables using artificial intelligence. And so that's how we close out Tuesday. We close out Tuesday with a cocktail party. And then on Wednesday, we're going to spend the morning on Clarity here. And then this is another change that I hadn't highlighted. And then Barry and Larry and I are going to, then you have an opportunity to ask, and we're going to break the group into 3 groups. And you'll have an opportunity if how are people using, best practice. I'm just teasing this out, right? Each of those groups is going to tackle a challenge, opportunity, problem, or idea, sort of in one of 2 rubrics. One is best practices for running an advisory business, but I suspect that people are going to focus on best practices for generating client results, delivering client wins, and using Clarity to do that could be the group. Could be the group discussion. And so, I anticipate, and then each of the groups is going to present the challenge and what they came up with to the plenary. And so as you've just heard, Clarity, the methodology is woven all the way through it. Does that make sense, Chad?
Absolutely. Love it.
Cool. I know it's funny when you start doing this, I'm like, wow, we could run this for 5 days and not run out of topics, but we got to save some for next time. We were doing 2 events a year. This year we did 1, and then we'll talk as a community, towards the end of the year here, probably in this forum, about what do we want to see in 24. There are, and leaving, you'll notice that we've separated the certification workshops from the summit. So the summit's an insular animal. Do we want to have 2 summits a year with different themes? Do we want to have one summit that's our own and one summit that's part of, that's, attached to another group? He said, teasing a question. So we've done that in the past with great success. So, for example, and I have not discussed this with BEI, what would it look like if in August a bunch of us parachuted in and we had our own room and we could participate in some of their workshops and presentations and they could participate in ours? What would that look like? That's just an idea. I haven't discussed it with anyone. So, that's just an idea at this stage. But those are the kinds of things we'll talk about as a community. Does that make sense? It's all about, we talk about marketing, and marketing is very important. Put that topic aside. Creating strategic partnerships is the best way for us to build a thriving advisory business. And this topic that you're going to hear John and I talk about on Monday right here, this intersection, is really exciting for both organizations. In fact, for both professions. Let's leave the organizations aside. Imagine understanding what makes how to very clearly articulate to a wealth advisor or an insurance person, a personal advisor, the value that they will get from introducing you to their clients. And that script is coming. Imagine if with the wealth advisor, the personal advisor, a traditional CPA, potentially an investment banker even, understands the value that they will get well enough that they are motivated to pick up the phone and call Chad Connery and say, hey man, I'm in Nashville. I have a client. Can we meet and discuss whether or not it'd be appropriate for you to get together with them? So that's all about elevating awareness. And that's elevating awareness. Start solving a bigger problem, the bigger problem, or the bigger opportunity. Cool. Questions? What else? Well, I didn't stop you guys in your tracks.
George, just to add to your discussion there about trying to partner with wealth managers and other professionals.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges I see in that is that many of them only look at, their clients from their narrow professional lens. In other words, if they don't see an opportunity for them to sell their services and what they do well, they kind of shy away from bringing someone else in, even though down the road it could lead to more work for them. My sense and my experience has been that they can't see an immediate revenue return for them working with you. They're just like, it's like a crapshoot for them. Well, why should I do it? Yeah. And so I think that's the hurdle. The hurdle that we have is that, they have a very narrow focus. They approach, even in exit planning, if you're a wealth manager looks at exit planning as nothing more than helping the client with their investment portfolio and their retirement savings. That's all they focus on. They don't see the bigger picture. A lot of them don't see and they don't understand that it takes a team to do this. And so a lot of them just don't get involved because they just don't see an immediate payoff for themselves. That's been my experience. And it's hard to get them to see it. The only time I'm successful is when the wealth managers in the organization, if they go through a program like John Brown's or they go through the CEPA program by Exit Planning Institute, they understand that you need to have a holistic approach, a multidiscipline approach, and they get it. But if they don't go through that, then they're just looking at it very narrowly. That's been my experience. And so trying to overcome that and trying to show them that, there is some return for them, there is something in it for them, I think is a big hurdle.
Yeah, Michael, I'd like to piggyback off that. I agree with you 100%. Until that financial planner, they realize, wait a minute, Chad has a client that's looking to sell his $5 million business, and this is his retirement. Oh, now all of a sudden they want to have a conversation with me, right? Because they're looking to get that $5 million check to invest for them.
Yeah. Listen, a wealth advisor only focuses. I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat. So, thank you, Steve. The wealth advisor only is looking at 10 or 15% of the client's wealth, right? If we can agree that, let's just throw some numbers around, 80% of their wealth is tied up in their business. So let's go to your point, Michael, and Chet. If I'm sitting down with a wealth advisor and I've had this conversation with one, just as a trial balloon, with one very large wealth advisory firm where we're very well plugged in, and they were they sat bolt upright. They were like, heck yes. How do we have a conversation with the wealth advisor where the wealth advisor sees opportunities? Let's talk about strategic culture. Let's talk about an effective senior leadership team. Let's talk about the execution leadership system and pushing those KPIs, reaching those KPIs down in the organization, and think in terms of, I'm just, put some, and you guys join in, right? 401k, right? And non-qualified plans, right? Qualified plans, non-qualified plans, insurance products, the more sophisticated insurance products, life insurance funded by sell agreements, life insurance funded. And some of this is, some of this can be inexpensive term. Some of it's investment grade, right? Whole insurance. There are a lot of opportunities that once the wealth advisor understands that those opportunities exist, their next question is, well, how the heck can I convince my client? How do I get my client to not see me as a sales guy sitting across the desk trying to get them a bunch of my products that are going to benefit me? How do I not show up with, thank you, Kevin Kniebel, commission breath when I'm talking to my client? If Michael says, your senior leadership team, how do we make sure that as we do this work, they're going to have to work harder, right? They're going to have to do more. They're going to put in, at times, they're going to have to put in nights and weekends. At times, so is the rank and file. How do we make sure that they understand what's in it for them? And deferred comp can be one of the answers, right? Insurance products can be one of the answers. And if we structure it correctly, those can protect the business owner as well. I decide that Joseph is not pulling his weight, and we'll pick on Joseph. Joseph isn't pulling his weight, and Joseph isn't really. Maybe he's bringing some toxicity to the process. And I decide I don't want Joseph around anymore. If I can make these deferred comp terminable, that there are all sorts of very sophisticated ways. Phantom stock, we all talk about it. How is that structured? What would it look like? What are best practices? If the insurance and or wealth advisor can have that, can understand what the heck, all of that makes them money, and right away, right? They get their commissions now, and it's very good for the business owner, right? This is good for the business owner. The business owner benefits. I'm not talking about dunning the business owner. The business owner wins, right? So by availing themselves of these more sophisticated, of acting like a grown-up company, doing the things that are more like what the publics do than what your typical private is. Any of that hang together? Anybody want to shoot me in the forehead? Go ahead, Michael, please.
Yeah.
And I want to share a slide that I kind of show that kind of gets people interested, especially the
because
managers.
you just did a great presentation, Michael. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But I show people this slide, especially business owners, and it really resonates with them as to why they need to focus on working on transferable value and the monetization, making their business, transferable and valuable. Can I share my screen? Am I allowed?
I think you can. Let's see. You try and more.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So I share this thing. I call it the Pac-Man slide. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before, right? So I say the 55-year, let's look at the investment portfolios of a 55-year-old non-business owner on the left, right? And you can see that their portfolio is diversified, right? Stocks, bonds, real estate, other investments. So they manage risk by a diversified set of portfolio investments. But if you look at the right side, which is I call the Pac-Man slide, right? You see the business owner, to your point, right, has 80 to 85% of their wealth tied up in their company, right? Which is an illiquid private investment. And so think about the risk that you take there as a business owner.
By the way, an underperforming asset, right?
Well, I don't want to insult anyone, but I'm just saying that look at that risk portfolio, look at that risk assessment. I mean, the risk balance you have there, right? I mean, 80 to 85% of your portfolio is in your company, and that makes it all the more important, right, for you to be able to build it, make it transferable, and monetize it, because you have a lot of risk. I mean, if my investment manager said to me, put 80% of your investments in one stock, I would probably tell them they're crazy. But business owners are there for the most part. Yeah. But that's kind of a way of getting their attention to say, yeah, I got to do something with my company, because my company is this large part of my investment portfolio.
You're absolutely right. And I would build on that and say, this is a company that we get back to the fairy tale, right? They believe that they can work for us. And I'm making generalizations, but the pre-middle market, middle market, we're going to work as long as we want. and then we're going to sell our company for what we need. And I know it'll take a little time to get the company ready, but ultimately I'm going to get six turns at the deal table, and I'm going to be fine. Well, that's we better start working now to make that true, because if not, it in all likelihood won't be true. And wealth advisors, and that's one of the reasons I'm thrilled that the Raymond Jameses and UBSs and Morgan Stanleys of the world, the Brown Advisories of the world, are putting people through an exit planning process. Because to date, and this is a conversation we've been having with wealth advisors for a decade. To date, they sit down with a business owning client, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but they say, "Hey, oh, you've got your own business. What's it worth? 20 million. Okay," and they put 20 million in the plan. Well, no.
George, can I bring it back to the initial conversation about how to approach wealth advisors?
Absolutely.
I spent about 7 years in financial services as let's call it a retail broker, if it's the right way to put it. And early in my career, I realized that most business owners or most wealthy people don't really care, don't want to spend too much time talking about their portfolio. They're busy with their business. So I kind of took a different tack. I was working at Merrill Lynch at the time. They had something called a cash management account. And what I did was I started approaching business owners for lending facilities. And I can tell you that the minute you talk about giving somebody money, you've got everybody's attention, right? And the outshoot of that was when a client became, a lending client of mine, the conversation then went to portfolios and their investments, and it was an automatic given. So I think from the way we can talk to wealth advisors is twofold. Number one, clients don't want to talk to you about how smart you are and how good you're going to manage your portfolio, but everybody wants to talk about how they're going to grow their business. So a wealth advisor that changes his marketing tactic towards, tell me about your business, what's going on in your business, that's going to engender a much closer relationship with the potential client than is going to be about talking about the returns on his investment portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is, if he's able to guide his client to grow his business, that means his profits are going to go up. That means more money is going into the retirement accounts. And I will tell you that no matter how wealthy a person is, if he's an employee, the growth of his portfolio is capped to a certain amount. If he's a business owner, the amounts that can be added to his investment portfolio is very, very significant on an annual basis. So he's better off focusing on helping his clients grow their business and make their business more profitable to grow his business. So it's not about him thinking long term, or he's not able to capitalize on it earlier. It's just a way of, creating that relationship that is really geared and focused around growing the business. And then, like I said, what happened to me, I had clients that were, their business were generating 4 or 5 million a year, usually around 1.5 million EBITDA. I'm talking about in the early 2000s. And all he had was a $1 million 401k for his company. And his personal portfolio was $3 or $4 million. But, once we got started and got him access to lending facilities, the business started to grow very, very quickly. And I was a beneficiary of all that new money that was coming in. So that's a little bit different than going to someone who is, for example, maybe has money, maybe inherited, he's got a $3 million portfolio, or $5 million, or even $10 million portfolio. Wonderful. You've got him as a client. What's the growth of those underlying assets? And for financial advisors, the name of the game is assets under management. Mm-hmm. So I think you can have that conversation. I think it's more difficult with someone who works for a major wirehouse, but certainly for the RIAs, the independents, it's an easier conversation. But we shouldn't be talking about, we should not be guiding them to talk about all the things, all the details that we talk about. Like, for example, Michael, not with all due respect, it's not that any of that's not true. They don't want to hear your story about how smart you are and what you can do for them. You just need to be able to engage them in conversations that matter to them. And for the wealth advisor, what matters to a business owner is business, not his portfolio. And what matters to an RIA, assets under management. So I think just making that chain over there will make it easier to market if you want to go after that group.
I like it. Thank you very much, Joseph. That's a perspective.
And by the way, I built in less than 2 years in the 90s, $180 million in portfolio assets simply from going to business lending, even though as a retail broker, nobody does business lending and using the cash management account.
Wow. that's growth. Very cool. I'd like to have that. I'd love to flesh out that conversation. That's interesting.
Yep. Better add it to the agenda.
Right. Steve, is that your book over your shoulder?
It is.
Excellent. I mean,
Yeah, I've been reading it, Steve. I downloaded it to my Kindle. I've been reading it. It's great.
Okay, well, you're a masochist, so good for you. Yeah, I've got a selfish question.
please.
Actually, it's two selfish questions. So I've got a part-time, when I get to it, project. I'm trying to build a 12-module exit planning course, and I'm looking for partnerships that out of my area of expertise. And one you guys have touched on this morning, and that's risk management. So basically an insurance type entity. I tried to reach out to, I think it's NFP, but those buttheads won't even talk to me. But they would be a good candidate. What I'm looking for is, so let me finish the story. So risk management, i.e. insurance, and then HR people person. So I want to have a module on how to treat your people within a business and a module on risk mitigation insurance. So I'm looking for entities with expertise in those arenas that can basically put together a presentation, a 50-minute presentation that either they can present, or it's dumbed down enough that I can present. And they would be the beneficiary of, they'd have their logo and you need help with this audience. Well, here's an expert, blah, blah, blah. So any ideas, anyone?
Well, Steve, on the personnel, we have a colleague in Michigan, Steve Ketchum, that can certainly help you.
Jeff Ketchum.
That's his business.
Yeah. And Jeff is great.
Yeah, Jeff Ketchum. I'm sorry, Jeff Ketchum.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeff.
Could one of you guys give me his contact information when you get a chance?
Sure. Ping me. I'll shoot it over.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve, if I understood you correctly, as you know, I keep beating the BEI gong, but it's on topic this morning. As BEI expands its install base of people who are trained in this business owner-based planning process, anyone with CEXP behind their name should be able to help very specifically with that conversation. And
well, I'm actually looking for, because they'd be more like me.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the provider of that particular service, as opposed to someone that like me who could, potentially speak about it and that sort of thing. I think Michael gets what I'm talking about.
Steve, what kind of insurance? What kind of insurance are you speaking of? Is it
anything?
Disability in life, or?
No, I mean, it's a couple of things. Buy-sell agreements, key man insurance. The things that a business owner ought to look at to mitigate their risk within.
That's I just beg to differ on your. I think you and I are talking a little bit across purposes. So BEI hundreds and hundreds of insurance people who are CEXPs, but by virtue of getting this owner-based planning training perspective, which is available only from BEI, they will be able to talk very specifically about what they bring to the table as not as an exit planner, but as someone who can help de-risk the business, motivate the senior leadership team, et cetera. Does that make sense? Am I missing what you're asking for?
No, you and I are on the same page again, or not now anyway.
We're always on the same page.
I did this. I participated in a thing like this with folks in Europe, and there was experts. I presented some of the sessions, but in some cases experts in their fields presented at least a portion of the briefing. And the idea is that if the quote unquote exit planner can't do it, then over to the expert. So
yeah. What John Brown and Jared Johnson are doing at BEI is saying, okay, wait, exit planning it's complicated, right? And we can have the debate again as to whether or not we should talk about exit, but it's complicated and it's a long-term win. And and by the way, as a wealth advisor, you're probably not an exit doer, right? So they want to make sure that their install base, their community can have a conversation that is very beneficial to the client, that also feathers their nest. I mean, this is a capitalist system, right? So if I sell Joseph, a few insurance products, he's going to benefit. We're de-risking the business, we're motivating his team, et cetera. And Joseph is going to get a paycheck out of it because that's the way the world works. So if we take it one step further, as we're having the growth conversation, when we run Clarity One, when we're looking at the effective senior leadership team, and the CEO at some point is going to say, there are a few oh my gods in there, right? And when they say, oh my God, or they're like, well, Steve, I don't know, how the heck do I keep them from leaving? How do I keep them from thinking I'm selling the business? How do I make it worth their while? at some point that's going to come up, then this program is one of the arrows in our quiver to say, well, you know what, would you be willing to meet with Joseph? Because Joseph is very, is very knowledgeable on these topics, and is it worth a conversation? Well, now we're moving the ball forward, and what I like selfishly, there are a few things I like selfishly for our community, but it is a solid way. Assuming we're successful, right? It's a solid way to deliver some quick wins for in enhancing the strategic culture of our client's business. That's
Just as you know, I've been morphing Growth Drive into exit planning, not seeing much of a difference. So I'm 1/12 done with my little project, and I've got 3 Growth Drive slides in my Exit Planning 101 intro.
okay.
deck.
Well, I use it. I use it as if you follow the Exit Planning Institute value acceleration methodology, if you're familiar with Chris Snyder's book, this is the perfect growth. Clarity 1 and 2 is the perfect triggering event.
Yeah.
In other words, it gets the owners. I'm losing my voice here. It gets the owner's attention to start doing something, right? Because once you start laying numbers out, this is where you are, this is where you need to be, this is where you could be. It gets most people's attention, and then they come to the realization that the status quo is not going to work for them. Something has to change, and so that's how you get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
So I know you're talking to John Brown, and I know John, and I do have that CEXP designation.
Yep.
But I'm wondering why. Well, you probably have reached out to the Exit Planning Institute as well, because your tool fits right into their methodology. It's like plug and play.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not a conversation I haven't talked to Chris in a few years, but it's not that I'm not willing to.
Well,
and I know that sounds like we just haven't connected.
Right.
So.
But I think the Clarity tool fits right into their whole methodology, especially at the discovery stage, right? Discovery gate. It's the triggering event, but it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Funny thing you say that. I've just spent, I'm
there
taking
you
the
go.
course. At 11 o'clock, I'm taking the test. So
Oh,
I did
good
all
luck.
the training. So
Good luck.
I'm jamming. I'm reviewing the answer keys right now. So,
Well, yeah.
but I do agree with you from the perspective of the fit with the methodology, and I like. One of the things is the choices 1 through 6, right? So there's no average, kind of forcing the owner to either above or below average, and that's kind of an interesting way to think about skewing. And then at what point do they actually have a liquidation experience at something below 3s, and to be you do have an ugly baby, and the best we could do is try to get through the liquidation phase and move on with our lives, right? Because I don't know what percentage of the organizations come up with a 3 on average, but it could be, I'm assuming it's pretty high. People always overestimate what they think they have there. So anyway, I'm knee deep into Walk to Destiny.
Well, congratulations, Joseph. I know you'll do great. And
I go by Joe, by the way. Anyway, we can you can call Joseph and me Joe. It works out.
Hey, George.
Talking about insurance guys, but beforehand, I was just, a thought came across my mind just very quickly. Most of the time insurance agents are replacing income. They could use this as an opportunity to sell another insurance product, because if they run through Clarity and then they see the gap, here you have an asset. If something happens to you, this is what you're likely going to sell it for. This is a gap. It's a waste for you to lose that. Here, take an insurance policy on that gap until you're able to meet that gap at some point in the future. So whether they're insurance, or they might even be at a wirehouse. They're still selling insurance products at the Merrills of the world. So, these are all different kinds of ways. You just kind of need to look at what you're doing and what they're generating revenue from, and be able to use it as a tool to help them,
It's just to piggyback on that.
Go ahead.
Just to piggyback on that, Joseph, you're absolutely correct. The other thing too, from an insurance perspective, is what if the value of the business puts them over the estate tax exemption, and how are they going to fund it? So you may need life insurance, you may have a taxable estate, and you may want to fund that estate tax by having setting up an ILIT, an irrevocable life insurance trust, and having insurance to cover it. So that's another way of
Right. I think my point was that you can set up strategic partnerships with them, offer them the ability to provide clarity to their clients at no cost to them, no cost to the client. It's just an additional report. You can co-brand it if you want, or however you want to do it. But the point is, it's an easy in to business owner clients because it doesn't require you to do much of anything other than just show them how they're going to benefit from accessing it.
Yeah. There's
George, I wanted to, sorry, George.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to bring you up to date on something that because I'm familiar with Capitalize. I think you are as well.
Yeah.
So now they've come up with something called dynamic scoring. So they just came out with that this week. So now they can basically they could show, like, by improving this item, this is how you improve. This is the dollar impact on kind of what you do in Clarity too. Mm-hmm. But now they're building that into their platform too. Before they didn't have it. Mm-hmm. So now they're ascribing a dollar value to improvements that they did, that they highlight when you go through their process. So just so you know, I'm just giving you some. I don't know if you knew that, but now they're.
I didn't know they had done. I'm not surprised. Craig's a smart guy, and it's a it's a product that's being fairly well received. If I was Biz Equity, I'd be looking at Capitalize saying,
No, it's interesting though. We had an event down here at the Fort Lauderdale chapter of the Exit Planning Institute. We talked about valuation, and we had some valuation folks, and we talked about the different types of valuations that are out there, and there are many, depending on their purpose, right?
Yeah.
And it seemed like most of those folks agree that for planning purposes, right? If you're just doing planning, which is what Clarity does. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily need a formal valuation.
That's
you can do like you guys, like you do, right? You just get to pull the multiple ranges and use an estimate of, you use net profit, net income, which really needs to be refined, right? Because it needs to be normalized EBITDA. But go ahead. But they were saying that for planning purposes, if you're way off, in other words, if you're 5 to 7, I mean, that's a good way. You could start there, right? And that's okay. I just throw that out.
I totally agree with you, which is one of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of that particular product. The cost of doing evaluation, which in my opinion is very subjective. And honestly, when you get to market, all those numbers might be totally off, or especially 2, 3, 4, or 5 years down the road. I think I think that the cost that for that particular valuation is an impediment to building business as opposed to helping or supporting. Unless you have a client that says, I'm selling in 3 months, where am I sitting at? Okay, that might be the exception, but those are not the clients that people look for when they're doing exit planning services usually.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. That's kind of what they came to. And then of course the investment banker on the panel said that the only value he really is concerned about when you're a year out or close to the sale is what the market is. What's the market value? I mean, forget about discounted cash. I mean, what are the multiples that are being paid for your type of business in the marketplace today? So they look at that. They use that valuation metric. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's even more complicated than that. I mean, you don't really know unless you know in advance, because you know who the buyer is. The difference in valuations between a strategic buyer or someone who's doing an add-on acquisition, or just a private investor or one of these self-funding buyers they're going to buy a business. Those numbers and the valuations will have such a huge range. It really serves no value. I think to your point, Michael, from the planning perspective, the ability to identify a baseline so you can now work to grow the value of the business from that perspective is very valuable. And the truth be told, it probably doesn't matter, as long as you use something reasonable, it probably doesn't matter what format you use, as long as you're consistent with it as you go across. There's formal valuations. I'm not sure they really add too much value. At least I have not experienced that it adds any value.
I put in my briefing yesterday, in my notes. The only time you need a certified briefing is if you're going to court.
Court, right? 100%.
Or if you're going to make gifts for IRS purposes, you need a formal valuation in accordance with IRS regs and specific guidelines that they will look for.
And for purchasing insurance many times, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there are a number of, but I think we all agree that a formal valuation is a special tool that has a more limited application than what we're doing with a calculation of value. I mean, we're really trying to educate our client. Say, listen, sure, there are some of your colleagues getting 6X. Let's figure out if you will. And I'll harken back to Steve. Steve is going to put a slide up that is fantastic. It's, two businesses with the same revenue, the same EBITDA, but then he puts and lays the facts below him. It's like, which one's going to get 6X and which one is going to get this? None. And they have the same latent value, right? They have the same latent value. They just can't, I'm preaching to the choir.
It's okay.
I have that
okay.
slide.
It's okay to talk about value. I think the more important point, or more poignant point, is where you compare to your peers. Because at the end of the day, wherever the market's at, whatever the buyer is going to be, if you're at the top of the range, if you're at that 80% or 85 score, you're going to get the best value whenever that time is that you're going to be exiting. You don't need to be focused on what the underlying value is. You just make sure that you tell your clients or prospects, you're just trying to make sure that your business is going to be best in class. You want to be at the top of the top of the chain, so to speak.
Strategic capacity, Joseph. I love to hear you say it.
100%.
Ask someone you meet at a trade show, or better yet, ask someone at the 19th hole of the golf course.
Exactly. We did a study years ago with American City Business Journals. Love those guys. And ACBJ went out and polled. They have 650,000 readers, many of whom own businesses. And they asked, okay, where do you get your information? And this is the people who think they're, are saying we're giving you the information. And these guys are saying, basically, I could summarize it as anecdotally. I'm getting it on, I'm getting it on the golf course. I'm getting it in conversations. I'm getting it, through LinkedIn. It's like, anyway, guys, I am going to have to scoot in 1 minute. Anybody have any closing questions, comments? This is a great. So
George, you started off saying you were going to ask me to do something, and you never did.
Michael, would you like to be on a panel at the conference about about your experience transferring from being a partner and a very formidable partner within a household name firm to being where you are today, and how you've successfully made that transfer?
Sure.
Thank you. Excellent. That's what the phone call is going to be about. Now you're on
George,
the spot, though. You asked me. Chad, go ahead.
George, I'll raise my hand if you do need anything from a sales perspective, sales marketing perspective. I'll be more than happy to help out.
Chad, let's talk about the Clarity lead generator. You game?
Yeah.
I'll call you. Awesome. Thank you.
All right,
you
guys.
can include me in that call if you wanted to, George.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. And to be clear, guys, if you haven't been to one of our events, you better be paying attention, because if you think you're going to sit in the back of the room looking at your phone, we're going to use, it's not the Socratic method, but it's really participatory. So
how many folks do you have, George, signed up?
We have a nice tight group where I think we have a little under 30 now.
Wow.
So it's going to be a nice tight group, guys. That allows us to have a different kind of conference, right? Rather than a lot of chalk and talk. This is, break into teams, roll up your sleeves. It allows us to facilitate, to have conversations where everyone can be heard. It's my favorite, as we grow, and we talk about this internally, right? As we grow, and we're growing really nicely. Thank you to each of you. As we grow, our events are going to grow. And, I would like, I look forward to the day when we we're renting out the Four Seasons. But we will always retain these smaller, whether they're inside the bigger event or they're separate. We'll always have these close personal experience where you have a chance to participate, to share, and to learn. And it's very, very, that's part of who we are, right? So I'd like to get back, our before the pandemic, we're on our way to having a 100-person conference. And I'd like to get, we're going to get back there and then some, because we're growing nicely. And some of the things that are coming online, guys, are going to be very good for each of you. I promise. So we're having fun. Thank you, guys. I mean, this is fun. So
Sunday
conversation. Thank you, gentlemen. No ladies this week. We got to fix that. And I'll have to harass Anna and tell her to get out of bed earlier.
Well, you're not meeting your DEI initiatives. Come on.
I'm where my brain is on that. We do. We need to get more guys. How do we get, you can think about this and maybe we'd talk about it. We're not going to have this next week, but how do we attract more women into our community, right? They are underrepresented. They're underrepresented in our profession and they are underrepresented in our community. So, and something I'd like to solve because it diversifies, these conversations, it makes these conversations more rich. Okay. Now we've run 3 over. Guys, thank you. I'll see you in Florida. Okay. If not, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Be good. Bye.